Welcome to our episode of Women in the Workforce. I'm Carrie Rosingana. I'm the CEO at Capital Area Michigan Works here in the greater Lansing area of Michigan. I will be your host as we are bringing together women in positions of leadership to shine a spotlight on their workforce impacts while also talking and addressing the disparities and challenges that are unique to women who are in the workforce.
And I'm Kate Snyder. I'm the CEO of Piper & Gold Public Relations here in Lansing, and I'll be joining Carrie each episode as co-host. After decades of friendship and working alongside each other in workforce development, Carrie and I really came up with the idea of creating this series to talk about the contributions of women in our region's workforce and kind of that lack of a support and peer network that often women find when they reach certain positions of leadership, but also to highlight workforce development as a whole, which is really misunderstood, and a lot of people don't realize all the elements that go into it. But we also did this to create a platform for discussion. We really wanted to create a place that we could talk about things that are unique to what we face as women and a lot of the disparities of women that aren't represented in environments like this.
So every episode, we're going to have a group of women who are in here with us so that we can do a roundtable discussion. And it's really meant to be a discussion. This is not us grilling you and asking you questions. We want it to be a conversation. And today, we're really grateful to be gathered at Risky Studios here in East Lansing, Michigan. And we're so grateful that you've chosen to be with us today. So let's dive right in, Kate.
Okay. So we know when amazing female leaders all get together, our introductions alone could fill this whole episode. So we're going to just call this segment what it is. This could be a whole episode. And instead of our full bios, our full introductions, we've asked each of you to introduce yourselves by summing up your professional bio in one sentence. And then we're asking each of you to share a single sentence about what you want people to know or understand that isn't represented in that bio. We really want to help people go behind the bio. And I want to encourage you to be as candid, personal, or vulnerable as you feel comfortable. And if you don't, that's cool too. Business self is more than welcome here. But we want to normalize being humans as leaders. And the fact that this pressure for perfection or certain standards that are projected upon us as women to represent our entire gender or to represent our entire race, to represent all mothers, to represent all people without children, that it's okay to be imperfect. Mm-hmm. So, as we dive into this, Carrie,
So I get to model for all of you what this looks like. So as you all know, and by my introduction, I am the executive officer for our workforce development here in our Tri-County region. But more than that, I'm a servant leader. I really believe in empowering my team to have the tools and resources that they need to serve our communities and make a true impact on helping people reach whatever goal they want to make. In addition to that, I am the mother of a very confident, fearless daughter who is 9 years old, and I'm also married to a Marine veteran who is very proud of his service to this country, and that really impacts our family, too, as the way that we live our lives. So that's a little bit of a way that you can do it, but you guys all get to do it on your own way, too. That's what's the beautiful thing about this conversation. So let's start with introducing our three guests today. So first, I'd like to welcome you, Ashlee Willis, who is the founder and CEO of Michigan Premier Events. So you get to be our first guest to share your one-sentence bio.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you guys for having me on here. It's such an honor. My name is Ashlee Willis. I'm the founder and CEO of Michigan Premier Events. We're an event management company. Something about me, other than my personal bio, is I have three amazing boys who are just all about engagement and all about just being with people. Mm-hmm. And then I also have a wonderful husband who's all about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so with all of that combined and being in the corporate space of business and events, that all kind of just goes all together because we're all about people coming together of all walks of life.
Thanks so much, Ashlee. We're really glad that you could come and be with us today.
Thank you.
So next up, I get to introduce Hope Rollins, the Director of Education and Training and the Equity in Action Project Lead at MPHI, I should know the boilerplate language, a nationally engaged but Michigan-based public health institute that does so much amazing work in our community. So Hope, can you share your one-sentence bio and also what's behind that bio?
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
This
you.
is such a wonderful opportunity to be able to share what goes beyond the bio. I love the word servant leader because that is the epitome of the historical aspect of my work as well as current and my future work. I work within, obviously, the Michigan Public Health Institute, but I also serve a lot of different levels within the American Public Health Association as well. So very proud of the work that I do volunteering within the community and obviously outside of the state of Michigan. In addition to that, I'm married to a wonderful husband also. We'll be celebrating 25 years this September, so we're excited about that. But we're actually an empty nester just recently. We have twin boys that are 18. They're going into their sophomore years. Highly intelligent, but not as intelligent as my wonderful daughter, who's older than them.
Let's hope they don't watch that.
But they're great children. They're great. And so I'm just very proud of their efforts. But also we're very heavily involved in our church work. So we both attend Union Missionary Baptist Church, where we both serve as associate ministers and volunteer grant writer, do work on AV, behind the scenes, the cameras, so a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Just
a lot. It was not a sentence by any means.
Just chilling.
It was a run-on with semicolons.
You don't want to get in there.
That's a lot. That's a lot going on. Well, and I'm really fortunate to get to introduce our final guest today, who is State Senator Sarah Anthony with Michigan State Senate. And she also, Sarah, you represented on our Capital Area Michigan Works Board back in the day when you were with Ingham County. So I know we have that deep and long-lived relationship that we've had through the partnership and workforce development. So thank you so much for joining us. So, Sarah, I would love to hear from you, your one-sentence bio, or it can be a couple more sentences if need be.
We're good.
As well as a little bit what we don't see behind the bio for you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I consider you a friend.
I consider you a friend,
yes,
too.
Yes, I appreciate just sharing space with you all. I'm Sarah, and in addition to being a state senator, I also serve as the appropriations chair. So I know where the money is, and we've tried to spread it out to people all across the state. And in addition to serving in that public role, which is always going to be rooted in service, I love music, I love dance, I love Lansing, and I love Star Wars.
Star Wars. I did not know that about you. See, we're learning new things about each other here in these conversations in the first few minutes.
It goes deep. Deeper than you know.
Well, I know if I'm having a Star Wars night ever, who do I make sure I invite?
I got costumes.
I love it. I love it.
I'm here for this. I'm here for this. My dad's a Trekkie, so you guys can have like a war, like a feud.
Not my people.
Nope. It's a different.
We are not the same.
Nope. There's that. It's like Marvel versus DC, which means basically this entire episode can now not be shown because the things that I've just said.
It's all good.
It's real. Okay, so let's get into why we're really here. We have 5 questions. They are the 5 questions that we try to ask each episode. We will never get through all 5 questions. That is an accepted fact, but we're going to have some combination of them. And we just want to kind of get your thoughts, get your perspectives on these 5 questions that really focus on like your career paths, but also workforce development as a whole and helping people understand these very complex topics.
So we're going to start. I'm going to ask a question and then we're going to rotate through, and feel free to jump in after each other, really organic conversation. So this is a really big one to kind of put out there. What do you think are the biggest challenges that women face in the workforce, or that are unique to being a woman in the workforce right now? For myself, I always think that trying to have any perception of having it all and balancing it all, that's a challenge. I don't think that it's possible to any given day be all and have it all and be able to not have stress on your life sometimes. And I think that's a challenge that I know I personally struggle with sometimes. So I think that that's one thing that pops to mind for me. And I'd love to hear from you all. What immediately comes to your mind when you think about that question?
As far as challenges?
Yeah.
Definitely the balance is a challenge. And that's why I think balancing your life with other activities that are outside of work, that bring you joy, that bring you passion, that bring you energy, so that you're not having that high expectation of your workplace of giving you all of that. So feeding time and providing space for families and friends, and being able to give back. There's a lot of gratitude and a lot of things that you pour into yourself, but the role as us, not just as women, but all individuals, is to give back. And I think when you do that on a regular basis, you're able to balance things out a little bit more.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think a big thing is just the balance, especially if you are a mom of kids and a wife. I think that whole, being at work and then having, as a parent, having that in the back of your mind, with all the challenges now that are going in the workspace just because of the pandemic. Some of those challenges, I think a lot of women face. And it's just something that has been really challenging. It's just that whole balance of having different roles, the mom role, then you got to go back to the work mode. So
one of the things I struggle a lot with is the like no community is a monolith, right? And so even in having conversations like this, recognizing and always trying to like do right by all women and trying to like represent all women when I realistically know that's impossible, right? Like I have my perspective, I have my position of privilege. I have all these factors that affect who I am and how I experience the workplace. And yet there are, regardless of the differences, there are also commonalities. And that is like, that's really big. How are we expected to every single day show up and like own that and represent that and be that, and then still like I fall asleep a lot at 6 o'clock on the couch, right? So
That's real. That is real.
So I think that's one of the big things for me that I think is unique to women. I don't think that's something that men feel out in the world. Like, well, I got to represent all men. Some men feel that, right? Like men of color have to deal with that every single day. Men from certain communities and backgrounds, but by and large, those in positions of power don't. And so, that's something that for me, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so big. How do I deal with this? And also, I'm going to eat Fritos for dinner. It's like shifting between these worlds.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Don't eat Fritos for dinner.
You should have told me that yesterday. It is too late.
At least Captain Crunch.
I'm speaking from experience. Yeah. I ate a bowl of Fritos for dinner. I didn't even have dip, and I was like eating them sadly. I don't have dip. There's nothing. It's just bare Fritos. Also, I'm on a meal plan, so hoping my nutritionist doesn't watch this. They weren't Fritos. It was, I don't know.
Carrots.
Chia pudding with, I don't know.
Honestly, I think oftentimes women think it's in our head, but the reality is these workplaces were never designed for women. Right. And so when we think about barriers, we think about why are the expectations so high? Why are the folks who get ahead in these workplaces spending 12, 15-hour days there? That's not normal. No. It's not normal to not have accommodations related to health care or child care. It's not. Your nights and weekends should not be consumed with a job. It should be consumed with family, with your own mental and physical and emotional health. Okay. And yet these jobs continue to require more of us. And, when I walk in the Capitol every day, I rarely see any portrait that looks like me. Yeah. Whether it's the size of the chairs, the fact that when I sit at these desks, they rip my pantyhose, the fact, all of the style that folks want to negotiate are very male-dominated, male-centric. And so my existence as a female continues to be a challenge to systems that were never designed for anyone that looks like me, whether it is my skin color, whether it's my gender, my economic status in life and upbringing. None of it was made for me. And so I would love to go into spaces. You all would probably love to go into spaces and just do the job.
Yes.
But you can't just do the job because you're dismantling so many things and also trying to do the job. And so I think a big challenge for women is to try to convince ourselves and have spaces like this to say, is this normal? Like, why am I not getting ahead?
Yes.
Why is this so
Yes.
hard? Why am I exhausted and eating things that, no shade,
They're delicious.
are delicious but not quite edifying? Why is that? And it's because we weren't meant to be here.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not giving me energy.
Yeah. I know. I want to say amen to all of that.
Well, the energy you have to think about with all of those spaces every time you go into them. What is it going to take to make those changes? How? And there's movement and I think there's some push behind making those changes, but there's so much further that we have to go. And it's going to take a long time. And it's going to take people having honest conversations about it to try to lift some of that up.
And something I think that's unique to women in that regard is like we're always asking ourselves, what version of me is it appropriate to be in this room? Like, what version of me do I need to be to get results? I will never forget when my husband said to me one day, why do you always interrupt people? And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he said, no, you always interrupt people. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I started to become self-aware. And I was pretty young when this happened. And I realized I had just gotten into the habit of jumping on the end of someone else's phrase. Because I was mostly in rooms of men. And it was the only way as a young, blonde, white girl, that looked like Barbie, that, I mean, not quite the proportions, but, that I could get anything into the conversation was if I jumped right in before they had finished the sentence. And it's a habit I still struggle with to this day, and it's probably been 20 years since I got that feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, so then thinking about that, let's ask one of the other questions. How would you challenge other women to leverage these unique perspectives and strengths to drive some of those changes, but also how do we do it and still balance? If we can answer this, we will be millionaires. We will patent and sell this. We just formed an LLC, gals.
Well, I think part of it, though, I mean, having conversations like this in a space where I feel safe sharing what my perspective is, what my experience has been. I don't always feel that necessarily in a room with people who don't have my experiences, don't look like me, don't have the same gender as me. That impacts the way sometimes I present myself. So being able to be authentically who I am and feeling comfortable to bring and highlight and lift these up, I think that's important. That's an important part of changing direction.
Most definitely. And one of the things that I'm really, really proud of at MPHI that Dr. Renee Kennedy has brought with her breadth of experience is not just a sense of belonging and creating that environment, but it's also mattering. That's the new term now, being seen, heard, and valued. And so as a woman, being able to speak about your historical experience, being able to speak about what you're currently giving to the table and future projections, but being able to quantify that, when you start bringing numbers into the conversation about what you've done, what you are doing, and what you plan to do, people can't fight against that. Now, of course, we know that people can twist and turn data to make it become their truths, but numbers can't lie if you're providing the truth and facts. So I think being able to feel comfortable in your space, being comfortable in your skin, and being authentic, being able to project that provides power. So even if you're not at the table and you're not a decision maker, there is power in understanding who you are and coming authentically as yourself. And knowing in your head and in your heart that you do matter. Because if you feel like you don't matter here, it's not going to project and exude outwardly when you're audibly speaking. So I think that's the key is first understanding the value that you bring to the table at all tables.
Yeah.
Exactly, and something that we do with our team is we do a lot of one-on-one conversations. So that way we get to know the individual a lot better, getting to know not just them as, being there on the job, but what they do outside of the job. And I think knowing their experiences, that is really critical because that really shows how they matter, valuing or piggyback off of what you just said. But having those one-on-one conversations has allowed me to identify, each individual, like what they bring to the table, what do they want to do to help enhance not just the business, but the community as a whole, because they want to be community leaders. They want to be out there representing Lansing. So having those one-on-one conversations has been really beneficial.
It's those relationships.
Exactly.
It starts with the relationships doing the business.
Always.
I wasn't even going to say anything, but I will now. Our existence is what challenges these systems, right? Like when you don't know what, a new employee at any of your organizations, when they see you leading differently, that's what's going to make it so we don't have to have these conversations in 50 or 100 years. Because women inherently just make spaces better. And I think the key is for women not to absorb oppressive behaviors that we have seen oftentimes men have in order to fit into some of these cultures. Like I'm under the leadership of our first female majority leader, Winnie Brinks. And the way that she has navigated these spaces is so inspiring. And the way I try to do that as well, when we have interns and employees, the only thing they're seeing is a strong female that leads with empathy, that creates space for rest and reflection and having an environment that you feel like you matter, right? That creates a complete generational shift that a young woman will never feel that and feel as though the next job that maybe they are under a male's leadership, they can call it out. They can challenge that because they've seen an experience different. And you all are doing that in your respective fields as well. So that's what's going to make it, I think, different.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's talk a little bit more about what does that look like? What does it sound like? What have we observed? What have we been able to do? Like you were saying, getting to know people as people. What can other folks learn and replicate that, are the behaviors, the tips and tricks to show people they matter, to help call out men in a way that, frankly, isn't going to harm us. Like that was something that very early on in my career, I got labeled as difficult or I got labeled as masculine. I got labeled as annoying and all of those things because I demonstrated through necessity, traditionally, what are traditionally perceived as male characteristics. So what can it look like? What are some of the things we can actively do in the workplace to help with creating those environments where women know they matter, despite society not always valuing their contributions?
Yeah.
That's a big one.
So one thing I know, in the business space is just this whole childcare flexibility. And so I know one of our teammates, she has a family, she has kids, and when the summer comes, you don't really have the school, you have to have childcare. Right. And so it's just having those conversations allow you just to see what's going on with that individual and how can you accommodate them. Because retention and talent is such a big thing right now. And when you have people on your team who they're just everything. And then knowing they may have some type of challenge personally, how can you help them is just by talking to them and how can you accommodate in those spaces. And I know that has really helped tremendously because that has made it where our team could be real truthful to each other. So they don't feel like, oh no, I have this challenge and now I got to go to Ashlee and I got to talk to her about it. No, they just come to me about it because they know that it's a team effort and it's about having those deep conversations and getting to know one another and relationship building.
Yeah.
You are spot on. For a long time, probably my first 10 years, I was scared to open up about who I actually am. Yeah. But as a result, people saw me as someone who could produce, but not as a human. And so I don't have children, but as my parents get older, as I'm a caregiver for nieces and for folks who are ailing in my family, there's no empathy there. I just say, I need a day off, as opposed to, I didn't realize that your brother was in an accident, and you may have to, at the drop of a hat, go and run to McLaren or Sparrow. It is, but in the same token, traditionally, when you have shared your experience, what you're going through, whether you have child care or adult care issues, it is seen as a liability.
Right.
It's seen as, well, you can't cut it. You're going to have too many issues. So that vulnerability being actually a strength in the workplace is, again, something I think women bring, but it is a risk. And there's women who still don't feel comfortable sharing their whole selves in the workplace for fear that it will be used against them.
And they pay a price financially, for those who are hourly, for those who are not in positions of socioeconomic privilege, to, at the drop of a hat, have to run and, run to the hospital. I mean, that could lose them their job. That could, that certainly, if they're hourly, is going to lose them pay. And there's a very real financial security cost in addition to the job progression, security aspects of it. And it is really hard to know, like, okay, is this a time to push or is this a time to protect?
Exactly. One of the efforts that MPHI is our anti-oppression effort. And so we're looking at everything. Policies, how they're implemented. We're looking at who is reviewing the policies and making sure that they have a voice and how things are read. And how people are interpreting those policies as well. Because you can have all sorts of things written, but if there's like a small piece talking about the travel policies and, we want you to utilize the least expensive flight or the least expensive location to spend the night, sometimes people's mindset is like, okay, well, I've got to go really cheap, and which kind of fosters this dangerous space for them. It's like, no, that's not what the policy is reading. We want you to come and read the policy and ensure that everyone is safe, no matter how they're traveling. We want to ensure that there is lactation space for moms, and that there's a space for that. And so all of these benefits in terms of MPHI's anti-oppression efforts and all of this actually speaks to looking for talent and people that are looking for employers that care about them as a person, as an individual, as a sole breadwinner within the home, as a caregiver for parents. So it's just important that even from an employer standpoint that we're doing our part, but also as employees in high levels of positions, that we look out for our staff, because securing and retaining great talent, that is so critical right now. We're at a detriment right now, not just within public health, but all sectors. So we need to do what we can.
And I think, thinking about that, I think when you asked the question, Kate, about what should we challenge people, ask why. Why is it this way? Why did you decide that this was the way this environment was going to look like this at your workplace? I mean, I think it's a bit of an antiquated approach to leadership. Leave your emotions, leave your life at the door when you enter. And COVID really opened that door to tie things together, to everything.
Kicked it down, came storming through.
All of the things.
Threw confetti everywhere.
But I think, I had leaders like that. I am an emotional leader. I'm proud of being able to be emotional and to be in touch with my emotions. But I've had leaders who say, you can't show that. You can't do that. And I thought, why? Why is it bad to be, that is authentic to who I am? And I respect that is your position and your way of leadership, but that's not how I want to be. And I think I've really put a focus with our team on, it's okay. If you are upset, let's talk about it. If you are sad, let's talk about it. And I think it's allowed for people to feel like they are in a safe and trusted environment. And that really leads into people staying because they feel that they are valued and they are heard, and they can actually offer feedback. If they have an idea, I want to hear it. Like, they can ask the why. And I think that that's something I always encourage our staff. Ask us why we do things. We want to share, and we want to know if you think we should do it differently.
And I think that going back to that, showing people they matter, we sometimes maybe don't realize the ripple effect that can have. And women are often overlooked, taken advantage of. It's just assumed that we'll be the ones who take the notes, that we'll be the ones who get the things scheduled, and that kind of stuff. And so, but we don't often think about that ripple effect that mattering has. So I'm going to share a story, but I'm also going to awkward pause for a moment so that if she's not comfortable with it, we can cut it out. Awkward pause. Okay, so you can cut there if you need to, but if we don't need to, so Olivia, who you can't see sitting off camera, is a student with our with Piper and Gold, and at a recent retreat where we flew in all of our team members from across the country, she shared with us and then made a bunch of people cry at work, but like happy, sort of happy cry, but also not happy cry because of circumstances. But she was sharing with us that after, she's a Michigan State student, and after the Michigan State shooting, she took a couple weeks off work because that was a lot. And we sent a care package. And she was telling us that, also, hopefully your dad doesn't mind me sharing this, but that it made her dad cry, that we, cared enough to acknowledge that she had been through this massive trauma experience, and that she worked somewhere where we acknowledged that and gave her some time to heal, but also just let her know that we were thinking about her, because we were. I mean, there was, texts going back and forth among everyone on the staff trying to does anyone know if Olivia's safe? How is she? Is she okay? Do we know where she's at? Do we have her cell? But also if she's still in danger, we don't want to text her and put her in more danger so we can just wait. And I mean, there were all these threads, and, I'm getting texts from all these different people, and finally I'm like, okay, we're all going to go on one thread. And then someone was like, I think Shannon was like, I heard from her. She's okay. And that's real life. There's no way that doesn't affect you when you show up that next day. And I have so many colleagues and friends that work at the university that, yesterday was the student memorial tribute. And the emotional impact that has on the people that work there, the ripple effects of knowing that they matter and that there's a space for that trauma, and that the way that we as employers handle that impacts their families, impacts their friends, impacts everyone around them. That, I think, is a trait that many women possess, that while it's a burden, we could all learn something from it as well, that burden of always caring for others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We're going to transition segments. Are you ready?
Okay.
So, talking about being our authentic selves, I actually, in being my authentic self, said to the gals, I was nervous about, should we go all in on this topic? Because I didn't want to tokenize, and then they're like, let's do it. So, we have a segment called Facts and Feelings. My therapist always says to me, facts, not feelings, when I'm spiraling in a little emotional anxiety hot mess. And my business coach says the exact same thing, and they have never met. So we are going to actually, for once, look at both the facts and the feelings. So I'm going to read you some facts, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what your reactions to that are. So our facts, our workforce development facts today, are actually surrounding a topic that Sarah has championed, hair discrimination. So here's our facts. 2023, so this year, Crown Workplace Research Study found, despite Michigan and 22 other states as of, Google told me as of last month, passing the Crown Act over the past few years, race-based hair discrimination still a big problem. You sponsored Senate Bill 90 to amend the state's Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act to prohibit discrimination based on traits historically associated with race. So hair texture, protective hairstyles, braids, locks, twists, things like that. And yet this study found that 2,990 women were surveyed, and Black women's hair was 2.5 times more likely to be perceived as unprofessional. More than half of Black women surveyed felt like they had to wear their hair straight in a job interview to be successful. 2/3 reported they'd changed their hair for a job interview. 1/5 of Black women surveyed between the ages of 25 and 34 had been sent home from work because of their hair. in 2023. So,
I mean, I have to ask, what emotions does that bring up to you when you hear this sort of data? I can't relate necessarily, that's not my experience. I can relate to the fact that I feel like women have a lot of pressure to present a certain way and to have an idealized version of what someone who's professional looks like. But I'd love to hear, from you, what each of you, and Sarah especially, I know you sponsored this. You obviously have a deep connection to this work with the efforts that you've taken. So I'd love to hear from you all about what your thoughts are and what emotions it feels.
Go ahead and start, Sarah.
Well, it's law now.
Right.
Thank goodness. I mean, we introduced this bill in 2019, right? Yeah. I mean, literally a month after California became the first state to actually sign the first Crown Act into law. And year after year, no one believed us. No, I mean, and to not be believed about an experience, right? Whether it is sexual harassment, whether it is the feeling that you get in a room in which no one is listening to the idea that you said 3 times and finally Jim across the table says the same. And it's just like, to not be believed, and so it's been encouraging to have real data, studies from MSU, studies from Dove, other entities that have put words to the feelings, to the experiences, primarily of Black women. But we know that men and children have also had these experiences. It has been just infuriating. It's been heartbreaking to hear directly from children who have been told they couldn't even take their school pictures because of braids.
Exactly.
Or kids whose hair has been cut by school personnel. I mean, those are the stories that I try to uplift the most, because even for individuals who have not experienced hair discrimination, you cannot deny what that emotional toll is on a child.
Exactly.
And to be told that the way your hair grows out of your head is ugly, is not right, needs to be tamed. And so I think policing women of all colors and walks of life should not be a thing. But we know that this issue is so unique to the Black woman's experience. And will this change every incidence of discrimination in the state? Absolutely not. But now we have tools,
and
it's just important. And so I've committed to wearing my hair however I want to. It is summertime. It's hot. I do not want to comb, twist, do anything to my hair besides get up and go. And so today I'm rocking my braids. They need to get redone. But, I think everything we're doing, whether it's in the legislature, in other areas, it's to create a pathway for the next woman, the next girl, so that it's not as hard for them. That is like I think our mission for all of us is, how is the world going to be better because we were here? And hopefully, our daughters, our granddaughters, it won't even be a thing. It'll be like the air we breathe. Like, I just walk in. I don't have to have that awkward conversation when we are, graduating from college to think, do I need to change my hair? Because I'm not going to land the job. It's going to instead be, all right, these are the skills, these are the internships. I am prepared to be the best candidate, not let me put a hot comb through my hair.
Exactly. Yeah, my twin boys are just now kind of going through this situation. I have one twin that has beautiful locks, and the tips are golden. And I just, he loves them, I love them. And so when it was time during the summer, he's a sports management business major, and it was time for him to, get his resume pulled together and start to put the list of who to interview with. And I caught myself getting ready to ask the question, and I'm like, how dare I? I have embraced his locks. He has embraced his locks. This is who he is. And I caught myself, and I'm glad I did, because I didn't want to raise any doubt. I didn't want to raise any concern. And he went on and had several different opportunities. He's working this summer and obviously going back to school in Davenport. And then my other son he has cornrows. And so he kind of changes back and forth between his afro and his cornrows. Anisia has just put in her own twist. And she's like, Mom, this is it. The Crown Act is out. So so now I can sit down. And we sat with Sarah talking about this. But it's our jobs to lead the way. It's our jobs to be that lamp to our feet and a light to our pathway of paving the way. And that's what our role is. We have to do this. It's a must. We can't sit still and just idle in this comfortable space where there's institutions that haven't respected us, that haven't embraced us. So reading the room and figuring out all that stuff, we have to come as ourselves.
And we have to create spaces that are equitable, where we can
Yes.
go to each space where we don't have to wear a different mask.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing.
That's exhausting.
Especially as Black women, you go to a board meeting, you gotta present yourself a certain way. When you go to a lunch meeting, or present yourself a certain way, and then when you go home, you can be yourself. But what I'm trying to say is the way you are with your friends and your family, you should be at work as well too. And I think in the workforce, we need to create those type of spaces for people to be their authentic selves. And that even goes with children, girls and boys. I mean, I have 3 boys, and my middleest one, he wants the 2 twists, and that's just his thing. And then as a mother, you just think, when he goes into these different spaces, how is he going to be treated? That's how, as a Black mother, you have to feel for your child, and you shouldn't have to be. You shouldn't have to fear for things like that, because that's the reality of it. But when we have leaders like Senator Anthony who are, helping for this matter to stop, we got to support as women for these efforts, because these efforts don't just lead to that one specific topic, it leads to so many doors. And as women, we have to collaborate and we have to support tremendously on things like this.
Yeah, it's very important. Yeah, Jaleel, who wrestles, the same one with the locks, wrestles at the D2 level at the university, and that was one of the questions that his coach asked me off to the side, a coach that's no longer there. And, if he maybe, takes the locks down or whatever, maybe he can have the headgear work a little bit better. And I'm like, I think he's fine. If anything, the locks are giving him extra cushion on the ears and extra cushion on his head. Not that he would be losing and getting pinned down, but yeah. So I'm like, I view it as a protective style in all ways.
That's good.
But it also, you speak to the breaking the generational cycles and, speaking to your child differently than not only the way you were spoken to, but what you personally experienced, right? And I'm sure maybe he's even experienced too, but having that it's scary to feel like they may get blindsided by something, but by projecting your own experiences you've had onto them, you're putting it in their mind when maybe they have dealt with it already and are like, what? IDGAF. So go ahead and mention it. We'll have this conversation kind of thing. So breaking those, as a parent, as a peer, as someone that, literally people in the state can say, you are the reason this is illegal.
And it's the workplace. It's also health. So I stopped chemically straightening my hair because my doctor said these will cause you fibroids. It will impact your reproductive health care. And when you think about the statistics for Black women, the existence of fibroids and what that has done to so many of us. It's like, what is this correlation? And study after study has said that we are literally killing ourselves in order to conform to these standards to get a job? The job isn't worth it, right? And so it's the economic case, it's the business case, it's also, the emotional case, and it's a healthcare case. And so if there's, the Crown Act, and it's outstanding, but there should be so many other bills and policies that we should be addressing that are unique to women's experiences. So,
and you said it, the data, because people don't believe it. And so being able to make sure people have those opportunities to hear the data, to see the data, to hear this is real. Yes. No one's making this up. No one's being melodramatic here. There is data, there is scientific research that proves that this is happening, and we need to pay attention to it.
Absolutely.
Okay, friends, it is time for us to share our takeaways. I just went ultimate show host. I don't know. I felt that was
giving Oprah.
I want my car. I had an Oprah moment.
I work for a government agency. You're not getting a car.
Right, is better.
That would not be responsible utilization of the taxpayer dollars.
I didn't say the state was paying for it. Decorations. I got it.
Okay, so we are. I want you to think of. Well, we gave our last guest 10 words, and those became 170 words. So I'm gonna say
True story.
True story. It was wonderful. But also I'm gonna say 3. It's gonna be our 3-word takeaways. So I want you to take a few seconds and think about like what either you hope other people will take away from today's conversation or what you're taking away from today's conversation. We're gonna give you a few seconds to talk about that while Carrie kind of wraps us up, and then we're going to come back to you and ask you about your 3 words.
Yeah, so while you're thinking about those 3 words,
yeah,
that's hard.
I edited it down. 10 was hard.
I mean, yeah, we were about 170, so that's good. But I do really want to thank each of you for being here today and for being vulnerable and being honest about this topic and this conversation. I think we could really talk about this for days, if not weeks, if not years, about what those experiences in being a woman leader here in our communities has looked like. And I'm just really grateful and appreciative that you 3 chose to be with us today. And we want you to know this is not going to be the end of this conversation by any means. And we're already talking about fun things to do to stay connected for follow-up with all of the folks that we have coming. So I want to thank you, Ashlee, founder and CEO of Michigan Premier Events, for being with us today. Hope Rollins, Director of Education and Training and Equity and Action Project Lead at MPHI. Thank you for being here. And Senator Sarah Anthony, thank you so much for being here and for your honesty and for sharing your thoughts on these topics today. So I'll kick us off, and then Kate's going to lead you all through, so I'll give you a few more minutes. My 3 words, and I'm going to try to stick to 3 words, are appreciation, shared connection, I guess that's 2 words, right? And also collaboration. Those are things that pop to mind when I think about how women work together, and it makes me really appreciative of you all being here today with us.
Yeah, those sentiments are really 3 sentiments. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I like that better.
I'm gonna take away from this. Hope, you inspired me really early on in this dialogue. Like beyond the CEO, I think I've kind of lost and forgotten how to just like be. You know, I can't even just sit and read a book. I have to be listening to an audiobook and working on a craft while I'm relaxing because I feel that compulsion to do. And so like I think to myself, what would I even just do? Like I eat Fritos for dinner. But
Stop.
So like that beyond the CEO role and finding those other things. And as soon as you said all that stuff, I thought like, how do you have the energy? And then you said the things that give you energy. And I was like, oh, that makes more sense now.
Yeah, exactly.
So for me, it's going beyond CEO me and just making, and gratitude for the privilege that allows me to be able to go beyond my job and find things that give me energy outside of work. Yeah. So I hope you want to go as my inspiration.
3 sentiments. Testimony, lived experiences, and mattering.
Oh, mattering. Love it.
You stayed on task.
Man.
You might be our first guest who's like, nailed it. That's really good, Hope.
Probably our last as well.
I had to redeem myself from the opening. So.
Hope stands alone. She is a saint. All right, Ashlee.
I had to write mine down before I forget. Self-reflection, relationship building, and speaking up.
Yeah.
Stick to the task. Okay.
No, you're fine. Impart your wisdom.
I would say empowerment, courage, and sisterhood.
You know you gotta go.
That's what a hug sounds like.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Okay, so truly thank you for being here. From the moment you all walked in this door, I knew this was going to be such a fun conversation. And I'm just so grateful that you've taken the time to share with us and ultimately to help other people through sharing your own experiences and sharing of yourself, which is exhausting. So thank you. On that note, I'm Kate Snyder. I am the CEO of Piper & Gold Public Relations in Lansing.
And I'm Carrie Rosingana, CEO of Capital Area Michigan Works. And we really are, again, appreciative of you joining us today and for you who are listening in for joining us and listening to our conversation. We really can't wait to welcome a new batch of amazing conversations with our guests at future Women in Workforce series in the future. So thank you so much, and thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.